The Croatian language is not easy, and when you end up learning the Croatian language on a Dalmatian island, it is even more difficult. And I learned very early on that learning language on an island was also not really Croatian, it was the local dialect. And I have a very good friend who was one of the first people to help me in life in Croatia, called Frank John Dubokovich in Jelsa. I thought he was helping me by teaching me Croatian, and it was only later that I learned that what I was learning was not really Croatian at all. Frank is an amazing guy because he was born in New Zealand. When he speaks, it's not quite clear to anybody, is he speaking English, Croatian or dialect? But I just about managed to understand him. But when he starts speaking the dialects of local people, it is impossible to understand, and I got fascinated. So one day back in November 2011, just after I'd started my Total Hvar, I decided to record him and just some greetings. What happened next was really quite astonishing. And so here he is in the very first lesson we did, called the Dalmatian grunt, because in Dalmatia, when somebody says hello to each other, it goes like this. Whoa. So Frankie, Professor, you have an army of people following you all around the world. How do you say hello in Hvar Dialects? And we did this video literally because we were bored in November, nothing else going on. And within a week we had 50,000 views on YouTube, and there were all these people in Australia saying, my uncle Ante here in Sydney speaks exactly the same way. He's from Jelsa but left 60 years ago. We decided to do another one in about the months of the year in Hvar Dialects compared to standard Croatian. May.
Svidan.
Frankie.
Moj.
June.
Lipan.
Frankie.
Zuj.
And it was really, really popular too. And so we started doing this series, and I realized there was an opportunity to document some of the language that was being lost, but also to do it in a funny way. And things really sort of took off, and then we were having people from different parts of Croatia coming to Jelsa, and they would then request to do a lesson. And so we have this example here of somebody from Dubrovnik, and we were comparing Dubrovnik dialects with the local dialects. Throw 2 eggs in a pan.
Razbij mi 2 jaja na tavu.
Razbij mi 2 jaja na prosulj.
Hit mi 2 jaja na pasuru.
And it really, really took off. And then we got contacted by national television, and they were doing a whole summer series on the dialects of Hvar. And so we actually got a special lesson on wine, which Frankie did. Frankie was rebranded not as Frankie, but as Professor Frank John Dubokovich, guardian of the Hvar dialects. Wherever he went, people were stopping him and asking him to do his iconic whoa, his grunt. And things got really, really insane one day when I got an email from a UK reality show, and they were doing a tour of Croatia, and they wanted the professor to come and do a language lesson. And so he was taken off to the beach in Zaostrog on the mainland, and as you can see from this clip here, he was teaching them how to say hello with his iconic sort of grunting. And I think one of the funniest things I've ever seen on television is all his disciples responding with their sort of grunting, as you can see here. It was just hilarious. The professor now is very much known as an icon of Croatian language. And one of the nicest things that happened, and probably the nicest email I ever got in my life, was from a guy called Gurgo Petrov, and he said that he was so inspired by this language lessons that he realized that there was a lot of Croatian dialect language being lost. And so he changed his university degree course, and then he ended up traveling up and down the coast, recording dialects of different islands and so on, so that they wouldn't be lost forever. And then came out with some books and everything else, and actually started making a career out of preserving the dialects of Croatia. And he was desperate to meet the professor. Last year we brought Gurgo together with the professor in Zagreb, and I asked him to bring a really, really specialist dialect speaker from somewhere else in Croatia. And he brought this wonderful woman, Martina, and we brought the professor and Martina together to do some different phrases in Croatian, with Gurgo speaking the standard Croatian. And judge for yourself. I mean, if you can tell which languages these are, it's incredible. Look, there's a hole in the window.
Gle, tamo je rupa na prozoru.
Pole rapa po Nistri.
Gledaj, tam je luknja v obloku.
And now Gurgo and I are looking at doing a project and maybe even a TV show with a competition of all the dialects of Croatia, just to preserve this wonderful tradition of diversity in terms of language. If you've never ever said hello in Croatian on the Dalmatian island, you say it like this. Oh!